All right, guys, so we are going to make a new tier list, okay? And I know you guys love tier lists. So this tier list is going to be a little bit different, okay? This tier list is not going to be about solo shuffle necessarily. This tier list is specifically about the AWC, what we saw this weekend, and what we will potentially see next weekend, okay? That's what this is about. This is about rated 3v3 in a competitive format. We can start off with the obvious. D, 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 and last but not least, D. Okay, perfect. Is there another tank? Okay, we got all the tanks exactly where they need to be, which is absolutely perfect, okay? This is great. Now, this is something that me and my co-casters discussed kind of the entire weekend, is who is ahead of the meta right now? Is the meta more developed in Europe, or is the meta more developed in North America? Like, is the meta actually like Druid Ellie, or do Paladin, Assassination Rogue, Shadow Priest comps just absolutely decimate that? In my humble opinion, I kind of feel like the Assassination Rogue, Shadow Priest Paladin dumpsters Ellie really bad. Like, I actually unironically think that NA is slightly ahead of the meta right now. And I wonder if we'll end up seeing changes or if it's not really going to matter. But one thing's for sure, when we saw the Assassination Rogue being tagged in Europe, it kind of solidified my opinion that Assassination is just king right now. I think in both regions, there was kind of a clear winner, and it was the Assassination Rogue that decimated. Like, Assassination Rogue went 4-0 in the grand finals in Europe, and Assassination Rogue, I think, went 4-1 as well. Pretty insane how strong it is. And it's not, I don't think it's getting any changes either. So, you know, considering how potent it was this week as well as next week, I really don't think anyone can argue that the true S tier right now, if you want like an S plus, it's Assassination Rogue. That's like S plus. Okay, I'm gonna try to rate this in a way where it's like, there's certain specs. I'll give you an example, like Fire Mage. Fire Mage as a standalone, I think is pretty weak. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's pretty weak. It is getting a little bit of buffs, but I do think there's a possibility that like Rogue Mage Paladin could actually be good. Like, I do think Fire Mage brings like a decent amount of consistent damage and control and stuff like that, where if you pair it with the right things, like Rogue Mage might actually be strong. And specifically relating to 3v3 and that one composition, I'm not going to put Fire Mage at D, but I'm going to put it at like a solid like C, I think, for now. I am prepared to change my mind. I do think it is possible that maybe it's B. We could put it at B. I'm confident with that. One viable comp. Maybe we'll put it at C. I really don't know. But yeah, next up we could put Frost. Frost right now is really interesting. Both Frost and Fire, I play these two specializations the most in solo shuffle. And I have pretty good success, honestly. Like, I don't think they're bad in solo shuffle. But when it comes to rated 3s, and it comes to the tournament, I just don't know if these specs are really going to be super viable. And I think a lot of that comes down to like Assassination Rogue being super effective into them, like Assassination Elemental, Assassination Shadow Priest, I think in general are really strong into the mage specs. I don't really know if Frost is going to have or Fire is going to have like a super meta spec, to be honest with you, and I don't know if we'll end up seeing it in the AWC. That being said, I do think there's a strong possibility we see Arcane. I think that's the most likely thing we see next week, is the Assassination Rogue with the Arcane Mage. And one of the reasons why Arcane is so strong is Kleptomania. Kleptomania is super effective, but although it's much less effective against Paladins, which seems to be kind of the meta. I'm wondering with some of the changes, what actually happens. Like, are we going to see more Disc Priests? Like, are we going to see just like a true traditional RMP? Someone asked, what beats Ellie Assassination Holy Paladin? So I would argue that the thing that would beat Ellie Assassination Holy Paladin is Shadow Priest. Like, think about it. If you are training a Shadow Priest, imagine that mirror match. You're training a Shadow Priest or you're training an Elemental Shaman. The Elemental Shaman has wall and then he's dead. You know, the Shadow Priest has Dispersion on a low cooldown. He has Swap. You know, he has a lot more tools to actually survive. He has Mass Dispel to get his healer out of crowd control. Like, I think in terms of casters, Shadow Priests right now are, they are being carried by Assassination Rogues. But I think you have to put them at like a high A tier because they can be carried by Assassination Rogues. That's very similar to Elemental Shaman as well. And of course, Arcane Mage. Yeah, so this tier list, once again, a reminder of what we saw in the AWC and considerations for next week with some of the changes. We could put Ellie at S tier because I do think it has Unlike Shadow Priest, so like Shadow Priest, for example, is very good with Rogue right now, but I don't really think you would see it outside of playing with an Assassination Rogue. Unlike Elemental Shaman, which you actually see played with everything, right? Like it's played with a Warlock, it could be played with a Rogue, it could be played with a Demon Hunter, it could be played with a lot of things. Demon Hunter I still think is very good. I feel like I want to have like S+. I want like we need an extra row. I think this is important, okay? So we still have, what else do we consider S tier? So I think Ferals were S tier, but I don't know if this is just one of those situations where everyone's claiming the sky is falling, or if Ferals are actually just going to suck. I'm not sure. I'm going to put them at B, because I think they're getting a bunch of damage nerfs. They're also getting a bunch of survivability nerfs, and I also think in general, Ferals are just worse than Assassination Rogues. So I'll put them at B tier. Unholy Death Knights, when I listen to Sea-Doo talk, he thinks that Unholy Death Knights are just absolutely dead. When I read the changes, it doesn't seem like it's that massive. So I kind of still feel like we're going to see Unholy Death Knights. I definitely feel like they're a step above Frost Mage and Pharaoh Druids. I'm going to put them at a solid A tier. Frost Death Knights, I think, are absolutely just one trick. I don't think Frost Death Knights are good. I think they have some comps that are okay. But I'm going to put Frost Death Knight at C tier for now. Boomkin, I think, is still just garbage, unfortunately. The chances that we see Boomkin at like really high 3v3 ratings, I think specifically just because if the meta is Assassination Rogue, things like Boomkins are just going to die. You're just going to get kidneyed and die, unfortunately. So the chances that we see them in the AWC, extremely low, in my humble opinion. Fury Warriors are an interesting one. They are getting a lot of damage buffs. Like I've seen people in PvE complain that the damage buffs for Fury Warriors are actually too high. So I don't really know where to place Fury. Like Fury is going to be able to maintain its healing reduction for longer and also got a big damage increase. So perhaps Fury stonks are up. Maybe it's like A tier now. What are your all thoughts on that? I also think that Arms Warriors, I think Arms Warriors are going to be S tier. Now, I am also willing to accept that maybe I don't understand the changes enough, but I think Warriors are very close, right? Like, Warriors' damage right now is incredible. I think Warriors have good utility, they have good damage, they have good lockdown. The one downside about the Warrior is it dies. And I think with the changes in 10.05, I'm not convinced it's just going to die, but it could, right? Like, there's a bit of a question mark here for Warrior. The opinion I've seen from a lot of players, like I was listening to Waz speak, this is what I thought before, but this I was listening to Waz and a bunch of other people speak about it as well, so it's not just my opinion. If Warriors don't die, they are going to be S tier, 100%. Are they going to be Asa Rogue? Because Warriors, I think there's going to be like, Warriors are one of those classes that just work well with, they work well with others, right? Like they're friendly. The Warrior is the type of person you want to like have on your workforce. They work well with everything. They're going to work with Rep Paladins. They're going to work with Enhancement Shamans. They're going to work with DKs. They're going to work with Ellie Shamans. They're going to work with Mages. They're going to work with everything. You know what I mean? Yeah, Arms Warrior, I think, is a bit of a question mark, but I think there's the potential that it is S tier. Now, Subtlety Rogue, we saw Rat. Actually, I'm a big Rat fan. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed watching Rat play. I think Subtlety Rogue, personally, is like a B tier. I think in certain comps, it's pretty good. But I would put it at like a B or C. I'll put it at B. We'll put it at B. Yeah, I think Subtlety in general is just, it's a lot less consistent than Assassination, right? Like the thing about Assassination that makes it so good is you have every poison in the game. Asa Rogues are crazy, man. Like Asa Rogues are so simple and they're so effective with their kit. It's crazy. But yeah, just a lot less consistent. Subtlety Rogue, you got to make fancy plays. You got to like do crazy stuff. Someone said that they have no kill potential solo. Kind of true. With all their cooldowns, it can definitely kill somebody, but at like a top level in AWC, Sub Rogue is kind of a one trick. Very similar to like Mark's Hunter, right? Like Mark's Hunter, C tier, garbage, maybe even D tier. Like actually getting off your damage as a Mark's Hunter is just not, it's not it against good players. Mark's is, especially, it's getting changes, right? It's D tier, never mind. Mark's Hunter had one trick with the double tap, but it's down there with the tanks right now. I think it's absolutely not good. I think I'd be blown away if we see it in the AWC at all, to be honest with you. That leads us with a few other specs. Now, we saw Devastation Evoker being played by Trill. It was interesting how as the longer Trill's games went, the less it became about one-shots, which intrigued me, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of one-shots, but that's being nerfed in 10.05. However, Disintegrate is being buffed. And I kind of wonder if the new thing for Devastation Evoker is going to be more about consistent damage and consistent pressure, more than burst. It's kind of counterintuitive with the meta right now because the meta is all about that burst, unless you're an assassination rogue. But I do think Devastation Evokers could have really, really high consistent damage. The only thing that brings them down is their squishiness, you know, in like a tournament environment. So I'm going to put them at B because I am intrigued by them. I think they're, you know, fun to play. And I think the Disintegrate buff might make that ability hit really, really hard. But they're kind of like a one trick, and their one trick is getting nerfed. But there's a chance it might be good, you know? Disintegrate spam could be very, very good. But the problem is, if Disintegrate spam is the only way they win, I feel like you can lock that down. So it's like an A-, B+ kind of thing, you know what I mean? I'll put it at the front of the Bs. Survival Hunter. So Survival Hunter, I think, is actually really good. I'm going to put it at A tier. I didn't realize how strong the tier set was for Survival Hunter. I think the tournament meta, and as people get 4-set, it only gets better and better. I think as more people get 4-set and maybe people get the Mythic Bow, Survival Hunter actually gets the most damage from tier of anything. I was looking at a list actually of who benefits the most in terms of single target and AoE damage, and Survival Hunter actually gets, I think it's 16% more. Like, Survival Hunter gets a 16% single target DPS increase from their tier, which is nuts. Absolutely nuts. It's the highest of anyone. Might even be higher. It might be like 16.5%. But yeah, Survival Hunter A tier. I just don't know what Survival Hunter is going to be able to play with. That's the main problem. Is it seems like it only works well with a Feral, or only works with the Subtlety Rogue. So the main problem for Survival is its partners are not that strong right now, especially with Ferals getting nerfed. Maybe Sub-Survival could be good. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, Shadow Priest Survival could be decent as well. Restoration Druid is actually getting some healing nerfs, which is interesting. So in Europe, the story of the whole tournament was just Restoration Druid, right? In NA, all the Resto Druids got absolutely dumpstered. Now, you can draw your own conclusions about that. I've heard people say like, oh yeah, the Resto Druids in NA are just way worse. Well, I feel like the Resto Druids in NA currently have to deal with a lot more bullshit. Like the fact that there's so many teams that main Shadow Priest, Assassination Rogue, I think it's hell for Resto Druids in NA, to be honest with you. So I kind of wonder if there's going to be like a shift for players in Europe. Like, are we going to see more Paladins? We don't really have many people playing the Shadow Priest Assassination Rogue, but yeah, according to Sidu, when I was listening to him speak, he said he is absolutely confident that if any of the European teams played Evoker or Druid in NA, they would lose instantly. That's what he said. Is that some NA propaganda? I'm not sure, but I will say when I saw Restoration Druids play in NA, it seemed like they were just screwed. Like, really, really screwed. So, like, poor Tuna, you know? It's just like, what the hell do you do, man? I watched a game from Tuna's point of view. This is the game. He comes out of stealth, he gets hodged. Out of the hodge, he gets Blinding Light. Out of the Blinding Light, he gets Psychic Horde. Out of the Psychic Horde, he gets silenced. Out of the silence, he gets blind. He trinkets the blind. He instantly gets gouged. Then he gets Garroted. Then he gets kidney shot. Then he gets hodged and he dies. NA's yeah, exactly. NA has a crazy whole W meta, especially with the Paladin, Assassination Rogue, Shadow Priest. Like, I don't know how I feel about Druids, but we have to put them in at least like an A tier. I don't really know if they're getting many changes. They're getting some survivability nerfs, which makes them even worse. But yeah, I'm not sure. Preservation Evoker is another one that I think a lot of people had really high hopes for, but it ended up kind of falling flat. Paladin is getting some changes. I don't really know how I feel about Paladins. I think a lot of people, it's hard to exactly say how Holy Paladins are going to be, but I'm going to put them at S tier for now. This is, you know, there's a lot of changes incoming. I'm going to say that. There's a lot of changes incoming, and I do feel like Holy Paladins could either, are they going to benefit or are they getting nerfed? Like, it's really hard to say. Discipline Priest is another one that's getting a ton of different changes with like their pain suppression and the way they heal. So I think Discipline Priest stocks went up a lot, to be honest with you. I think they went up a lot. Born Good says they're going to be A tier. So do we think that Resto Druid, Preservation Evoker, Discipline Priest, and Paladin are all going to be A tier? I need some help. Resto Druid is S. I feel like that's some... is it? What I saw, it didn't seem like Resto Druid's in a tournament with the best people. That Paladin was worse than Druid. I'm not going to lie. EU brought 0 Holy Paladins. Yeah, but that's what we talked about. So Mistweaver Monk is an interesting one to me. Mistweaver Monk is an interesting one to me. So we're gonna put all these healers. I think all these healers are gonna be good. I think Discipline Priest went up. Mistweaver is an interesting one. It got some mana efficiency buffs. When I spoke to some healers about Mistweaver, they basically said Mistweaver's main problem is it dies in stuns. And the meta right now with the Assassination Rogue is kill you in stuns. Like, Mistweaver has some answers, like you can port and stuns and stuff like that, but the cooldown is too long, right? You have a 35-second port, and kidney shot's a 20-second cooldown. It can be really hard to recover. I was thinking that there are certain comps that might be okay. Like, one of the comps I was thinking might be good into Assassination Rogue, and maybe this is Cope, but I feel like Mistweaver and Windwalker together might be able to like outlast an Assassination Rogue. I know you guys probably think I'm crazy, but when I play my Windwalker Monk, I actually feel like I can do a decent job surviving, although I haven't played on the tournament realm, so it is different. But maybe that's something that could work. Like, you have double grapple weapon for the stuns, double paralyze, double detox. Maybe it's okay. I feel like it could be annoying for an Assassination Rogue, but I'm really not sure. Overall, I think Mistweaver Monk, it didn't really gain that much. It got some buffs. There's a possibility that it might be played, but I still think overall it's not a very versatile healer. So we're gonna put it down at C. I won't put it at D, but yeah, put it at C for now. Okay. Windwalker Monk, I'll put it at A. Yeah, you don't really have Dispel Protection, right? Like, the meta right now really is stuns and dispels, and those things screw Mistweaver Monks the hardest, I think, unfortunately. Windwalker Monks, I'm going to put at A tier. I think we saw some Windwalker Monks play. It looked good. I think Ellie Windwalker is one of those comps that we might see, but Ellie Windwalker kind of has the same problem. I think it just dies to Shadow Priest Assassination Rogue. But I think overall it's pretty strong. Beast Mastery Hunter, kind of in the same boat. We saw Jungle played. I do think that there's the potential we see more Beast Mastery Hunters. But yeah, with the 4-set, with the Mythic Bow, seemed very strong. In 3s. Ret Paladins, dude. So I think the only hope for Ret Paladins, I know everybody thinks that I'm a massive Ret Paladin hater, and in a way I am. And it's not because I hate Ret Paladins. I think Ret Paladins have a horrible design. And their burst is getting nerfed, which I think is overall a healthy thing for the game. Unfortunately, I think they might not have gotten enough to compensate. It remains to be seen. In like a solo shuffle environment, the Healing Hands buff doesn't really do anything, but it is possible that some of the utility buffs and healing buffs that Ret got is going to make it viable, specifically with Warrior. Like, I think the only chance for Ret Paladin is that Warriors are OP. That's it. If Warriors are not OP, then Ret Paladins they're not. It's not it, bro. Like, we're only going to see a Ret Paladin with a Warrior, I think. So if we don't see that, they're down in the C tier, unfortunately. And like I said, I feel like I always have to preface myself because people think that I'm like the Ret Paladin hater. I really am not. I know every class has its problems, but yeah, the one shot for Ret is stupid, and it got nerfed, and that was their one trick, right? It's kind of like a Devastation Evoker. Their one shot got nerfed. How are they going to be able to fare? I really don't know. Someone asked, why do Ret Paladins and Warriors work well together? Things like Spear of Bastion with a lockdown. Ret Paladin's kind of enabling Warrior with double freedom, like being able to connect like Ret damage during Sharpened Blade. It's just like, it's a very powerful composition together. So Ret Paladin's down at C tier. Outlaw Rogue. How do I feel about Outlaw Rogue? We didn't see any. We saw 0 Outlaw Rogues. I don't know, maybe like B tier. It has Kidney Shot, so it's probably okay, but I just don't think we're going to see it. I don't think we're going to see it. Pacing's too fast for Outlaw. Yeah, Outlaw needs like a slow, methodical, like chill place to develop. Kind of the same thing, right? Pacing is too fast for the Affliction Warlock. Like, a lot of these specs, so like Frost Mage, for example. Frost Mage is going to do a lot of damage. It's going to be like Affliction Warlock, right? But the problem with Frost Mage and Outlaw Rogue, I suppose, is that your win condition is dampening. Like, literally. If you're a Frost Mage, 90% of the time I win as a Frost Mage is because I dampen the enemy team. But Right now, I just don't think that you're going to like out dampen like Asa Ellie, Asa Shadow Priest. It's just not gonna happen, right? It's not gonna happen. Destro Warlock in NA was an interesting one. We saw 0 Destro Warlocks in Europe, but we saw a bunch in NA. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out for them that well. But I don't know. What do we think Destro is going to be? Is it down in the B tier, gutter? I think the thing with Destro is it seems like it works better with a rogue than some of the specs. It's like Arcane Mage, right? Like it works pretty well with a rogue. It could work pretty well with a warrior. Like maybe it's A-, B+ kind of thing. Top of the B, A. Put it here at low A. All right. Holy Priest. Dude, watching Zenelin play Holy Priest, like he's so good. But it's actually hilarious how far behind you fall and how fast you fall behind. Like, he is so good at Priest, and literally in 1 minute, his entire team is dead, and he's full panic mode, overlapping cooldowns, just dying through his heals, totally out of mana. I have to say, I feel like, I don't really know actually if Holy Priest is getting many buffs, but I'll put it at like a B maybe. It definitely feels worse than the other healers. I think that's a for sure. Resto Shaman is another one that's interesting. That doesn't seem to be a consensus. When there's some shamans that I talk to that say that Resto Shaman are getting buffed. There's some shamans that I talk to that say Resto Shamans are getting nerfed. So who do you listen to? I'm gonna be neutral because it seems like some are saying it's way better, some are saying it's way worse. I'm just gonna leave it at A. I'm gonna leave it at A. I will say it was really fun watching Absurds play Shaman and CD play Shaman. And getting like one shots with their lightning bolts and stuff, but that is getting nerfed. The Riptide nerf and DPS nerf on Shaman, I mean, maybe it went down a peg. I don't think it's as bad as this, to be honest with you. I think all the healers are, it depends what happens, right? If the meta ends up being like more dampening, Resto Druid is going to be it. But I do kind of feel like the Assassination Rogue rushdown with Shadow Priest and Ellie seems to be king. Enhancement Shaman, I'm going to put it here with Rhett. The only hope for Enhancement Shaman, literally the only hope for Enhancement Shaman is that Warriors are OP. If Warriors are OP, Enhancement Shamans might be okay. You might see Turbo, but that's the only thing you're going to see. 100%. It's like Fire Mage, right? Like all these things that are in C tier, it's like, yeah, Boomkin maybe works with the Demon Hunter. I doubt it. Fire Mage maybe works with the Rogue, but does it work better than Ellie or Shadow Priest? I don't think so. Enhancement Shaman maybe works with the Warrior. Rhett maybe works with the Warrior. And then Demo Warlock. I'm going to put Demo at A as well. It's pretty high A. I think it pairs really nicely with the Enhancement Shaman, with the Elemental Shaman. I think that comp is really, really solid. It's one we saw in Europe. Kind of do really well. It didn't do well in the Assassination Rogue, but I do feel like there's potential. So this is where I'd kind of put the meta right now. Frost has hope to play with a few different things. Like there is a possibility that Frost is good with an Arms Warrior. Like you do have decent damage. People are saying that, the average match length is going to triple in the AWC. It is possible. I personally, I know all the players were, well, not all the players, but a lot of the players were saying, the games are way too fast. It's way too intense, but I liked it. It was fun to watch. Maybe it's not fun to play. I thought it was it was one of my favorite tournaments to watch. I just like that people are dying without cooldowns. It makes it way more entertaining. I think when it's like a strict cooldown trade and you can only win with CDs, it's a bit rough. And I also feel like we saw glimpses of long matches, right? Like when it was Resto Druid versus Resto Druid, we kind of saw the dampening. It was coming, is lingering under the Shadowlands. You know what I mean? We saw the damp of the Resto Druid. It's like, thank God the Paladins are there with the Assassination Rogues to just kill them, but they're coming, dude. We saw Europe, dude. They're all about that dampening. The good news is, the only thing I'll say about like the dampening thing is I think Assassination Rogues, they accelerate dampening. Everyone's dead, everyone's kidneyed, everyone's shivved. Great. Okay, so this is my prediction for some of the comps and classes that we will see next week in the AWC. We can revisit this like after the qualifications on Wednesday. We can see if I was right, if I was wrong, what comps are being played. I think there's a lot of changes. Obviously, I'm not going to get it 100% right, but I am very confident that Assassination Rogue is still the god spec. 100%. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely the god spec.